it's Dawn Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we'd just do a little, first quarter check-in on my Gamify My Life process. So if you're new to my channel or you missed me talking about this process, I am doing this sort of gamifying my task list, my to-do list, my mundane tasks, as well as some of my spiritual and personal growth work, and I've been tracking it all in a process I'm calling Gamify My Life. So I do have a whole video talking about how I set up this process. I'll leave that linked for you in the description box below. Today we're going to talk about how the first 3 months went. Now I've kind of talked about this in my monthly wrap-up videos where I kind of talk about the things that I got up to and what I worked with. I definitely have decks I associate with this, and I've talked about each one of those in detail in the last few monthly wrap-up videos. Today we're going to talk more about the planners and the actual process and how I've gone about keeping track of the Gamify My Life over the last few months. We'll talk about some of the changes that I've made and just kind of touch base with how the practice is going. So while I am primarily tracking things in my Hobonichi weeks, I do also have my cousins here. This is my daily planner, and I'm actually kind of keeping track of more what I do and then just recording it in here. So I use these two planners in tandem to help me keep my whole Gamify process organized. So we'll check in with that here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and do a little flip through of my Gamify My Life planner that I've created. Again, this is a Hobonichi weeks that I'm using. Everything goes in here after the fact. I don't plan in this per week. I just record what data I collect in here, kind of parse out the Gamify stuff, and then put it all in here so that I have it all at a glance. So I just created a little cover page for it. I have a little oracle card in here. I've got my identification checklist of my 5 categories. So for me, those are vitality, which is my health and wellness, insight, which is personal growth, charisma, which is my relationships, wisdom is spirituality, and dexterity is work. Everything is color coded to not only my little stickers here, but also my highlighters that I use in my daily planner. So that's really helped me to visually keep track of things. I did end up changing the color code for my dexterity. It was yellow. I changed it to gray because I realized that was the marker that I had been using anytime I did work-related stuff, so it made it just a little bit easier. Again, these 5 categories are kind of like the 5 things that I really want to be focusing on this year. I talked about them more in my original setup video. Again, links below if you want to check that out. I've just done some collaging in here. I have not yet figured out a way to use this particular spread. I don't know that I really need to. It's fine to have spreads that aren't filled out in my planner. I didn't do anything with December, so I will probably just tape that together and at least put those together. If I don't end up using this, I'll just tape it down too, and then they'll just end up going away. So basically what I've been doing is every month, at the end of the month, I've been going in and kind of filling in and totaling up all my points. So the numbers here in the daily boxes are like how many of my 5 categories did I interact with that day. So on Wednesday, January 1st, I only interacted with 3 of my 5 categories, but on Tuesday the 7th, I interacted with 4. And it doesn't look like I got a single day of all 5 categories interacted with. It's not really a big deal. I don't necessarily have a goal to interact with all 5 things every day. I just want to make sure that I'm touching base with them throughout the week. And it's just kind of handy to see how active I was in the different categories that I'm working in. This little section here represents when I was on vacation. I just didn't worry about tracking things. And over here is my totals for the month by category. So vitality, insight, charisma, wisdom, and dexterity. Again, dexterity was originally yellow. And this tells me that 10 times throughout the month, I interacted with my insight stuff. Again, not counting my vacation. So this is really only 2.5 weeks here. So my points for January are quite low, and that's okay because I was just getting started. I was just finding my way with this. So I have XP earned for level 1 is 57 points. So for me, each month is basically a level. There will be 12 levels in this year. And basically, if I continue to do this at least once a day, every day, all month long, then I will progress to the next level. So in level 1, I earned 57 points, and I do have this information also tracked in the back, which we'll talk about here when we get to this notes section. So in February, you can see all of my points. I definitely did better in some of my categories. Some days you can see where I really wasn't doing much in the way of connecting with the categories that I've set aside. Now I can also check my daily planner to see what was going on those days if I'm curious as to why I only got 2 points. This is a weekend. I was probably doing stuff with my husband this weekend. It's probably why I didn't have many points in many other things. But then you can see on this Saturday, I hit every single one of my categories that Saturday, so it must have been a really busy Saturday for me. So in level 2, which is basically February, I earned 75 points. And then here we have March. So in March, I earned 83. And this is kind of an interesting thing. You can see a progression here in the points that I've earned. So 57 to 75 to 83, which tells me that basically throughout the first 3 months, I was doing more. This was making me more mindful of these areas. You can see that my numbers are a little bit bigger here in March than they were in February. I definitely touched base more often with those key areas. And that's kind of the whole point of this process for me, is to just make me more aware and mindful of how I'm spending my time, where I'm spending my time, and making sure that I'm hitting those things that are really meaningful to me. And so it's been actually really great for that. So I've just got it tabbed off so that I know which month is coming up next. At the end of April, I will obviously fill this one out. So I'll just do a quick flip through of the weeklies because my layout pretty much has stayed the same. I basically, every time I do a thing in that category for the day, I earn a point. So green again is vitality. This is a charisma point, and this was a dexterity point. So I got 3 points total on Wednesday, the 1st of January, but I also have my points per week divided up over here. So in Vitality, I got 5 points. So I got 5 of the green dots. Insight, I only got 2, and those are these ones here. Charisma, I only got 3, and these are those ones. Wisdom, I got 0, and I didn't get to pull a card out of my reading, and I was very upset about that. That hasn't happened again, where I've actually skipped a whole category. This was enough of a learning lesson in my first week that I don't like when I don't at least get one thing done in a category. And in my dexterity, I had 2 points. Again, those were yellow at the beginning of the year. So then the following Monday, I actually do my readings the Monday after the week. So I went through this week, and then Monday, the 6th of February, I actually did the reading looking at not only the week previous, but also to kind of give me advice and things to think about the week moving forward. So it's kind of a transition, week previous into week coming. So for every category that I earned a point, I got to pull a card for my reading. You've seen those decks if you watch my monthly reflections. And I do a reading based around that, do my little reflections. And obviously I'm doing, stickers and decorating and stuff. Again, not getting this wisdom pull was a huge thing for me because I really was sad and disappointed that I missed that one card. So I made sure that I was connecting with wisdom at least once a month. And it's definitely increased quite a bit into March and April. I was playing with, in this particular spread, like the things that I did. So like where I earned these points. And that felt very, very overwhelming. I also don't need it because I have my daily planner and I can go in and take a look at exactly what each of these things were if I really need to know. But what this planner is mainly for is for tracking and keeping me aware and mindful of where I'm spending my time and energy. I don't need the details. I just need to know, am I connecting with my wisdom practice? Am I connecting with charisma? Am I doing dexterity work? That's really what this is for. And the point system and the dots help me to be mindful of that and create very easy visual reference points for me to look back on. So again, I have my reading here. I had my cards. I did do dice casting. Here's the next week, all my dots, did my points. I did pull my cards. I did not ever come back to do my reading. I think this reading is actually in my planner too, but I just never came back and filled it in here. And I left that because that's okay. This is when I was on vacation, and so instead of stressing about it, I just threw some fun stickers on it and decorated the pages. So moving into February, again, looking at still using the same dots, same point system, same type of reading. Again, cards, dice, and my reflections. And this is pretty much the same process that I have followed for the first 3 months of the year, and I'm still following moving into April. And it's just fun to be able to add a little decoration to them. I get my readings, I get my points, and I do try to make them fun. So like I try to earn this process. Now in my Gamify, I don't have anything for loot. Like what I earn by doing the things is my card readings and the time to play in my planner decoratively. So that's my loot. That's what I'm earning. There are other people who are doing Gamify who have loot things set up where like if they accomplish their goals for the week, then they get to like have a nice meal or they get to buy something off their wish list. That is fantastic. I love that idea. For me personally, I am very motivated by intangible things. I call it the pixel effect. because I'm a gamer. I will spend hundreds of hours in video games doing quests and gathering materials and things like that to like basically get like a pixel thing out of a game, right? It's non-existent. I can't actually keep it. It's not a physical thing, but it's the journey itself, the achievement, the doing of it that is enough of a reward. And for me, this is that same process. I do sort of get a physical thing because I'm doing a reading at the end of it, and that is working physically with cards, but it's not like a prize. It's more like a thing I earned. I created it. I see it more as like crafting. I'm crafting my reading throughout the week by making sure that I'm touching base with those things. So I'm like gathering my materials, right? If we're using gamer speak, gathering my materials, gathering my resources so that I can craft this reading at the end of each week. And that's kind of how I see it. And it works really well for me because I'm very motivated by that kind of experience, which probably does come back to a little bit of being a gamer, because I've worked very hard and spent hundreds and hundreds of hours like trying to earn things in games. And so it's kind of like that pixel effect. But anyway, you can see that the process is still the same. Sometimes depending on the cards that I'm using and if they have like certain messages on them, I'll write a little bit different things in here. I'm not going to go too far into April because we'll talk about that when I do my April reflections. But that's the first 3 months. And you can see like the process has pretty much stayed the same. The only change that I think I've really made is that I switched the color coding on my dexterity from the yellow to the gray because I realized I was already using that gray color in my planner. I have what I'm calling my quest section. And so this is just like have goals. Right now, I'm still working on creating my goals around this. My first and basic goal for this whole process is just to complete the whole year. I would really like to be able to go through the whole year of doing this, even if I, change how I do it, even if I have to make adjustments. I just want to be able to say that I did this all year long. I think that would be a really great thing. Again, looking at that, being motivated by the journey, not necessarily the end result. And then one of my current goals is to increase my wisdom work, which, as you probably saw in my numbers back here, my wisdom was usually like 1 most of the time. And I really wanted to increase that. I wanted to increase my touch points with my wisdom, or my spirituality practice really is what it kind of represents, more than just once a week. And so I've been working on that really heavily in April as I was kind of looking back and going, my wisdom is pretty low actually. And then we have my XP tracker, which is just the main points that I earned, again, from those same boxes in the monthly calendar. I've got my total points earned here. So again, 57, 75, 83. I've just been putting some stickers in there to fill the blank spaces. And this is my XP bar. So basically, if I complete a month and I do something every day and I get something filled out every single day, then I get to fill in my XP bar. And at the end of the year, I will have a completed XP bar. Just fun little rewards for myself. I do have blank pages in between each of my sections just in case I have other things that I want to do with all of this. So then I go into my specific categories. So here we have vitality. Again, that's wellness. I am keeping track of the decks that I'm using. So far, I've only been using the energy archaeology for my vitality readings. I had some goals here around vitality. I've had to make some adjustments to those because earlier this year, last year I hurt my back and I've still been recovering, and I'm just now coming out of the tail end of that where I'm able to do some of these things again. So hopefully I'll be able to pick back up more with that. But I've had to adjust my expectations around my own vitality work and around things like exercise and how I could do those sort of things because, again, I was injured. So again, blank page between just in case I need it. So here's my insight, things that I do that constitute personal growth work for me. That's stuff like tarot readings, my fellowship practice, fiction reading, nonfiction reading. I actually haven't been tracking those as insight. That's pretty funny. Art and journaling. So looking back at this list I made now, I realized that I haven't been tracking any of these things, fiction, nonfiction, art, or journaling, as actual insight work. I've only been tracking tarot as insight work. So that's an interesting thing that I need to take a look at and see, do I want to refine this list? Do I want to remove these things from this list? Do I maybe need to create another category? Or do I want to just be more mindful that when I do those things, those do count as insight for me. Those count as personal growth. And so I need to be accounting for them. But I can tell you right now, based on what I've got in my planner, I haven't been accounting for those at all because I totally forgot about them. And that's okay. That's why I've got things written down and why I think check-ins are really important. So I can see where I'm at and kind of touch base with my own goals. So I can say, oh yeah, I wanted to do that thing. Or no, that really doesn't work for me after all. So I'm just going to ditch it. So here I have my insight decks. So for January and February, I use Dark Days Tarot as my insight deck. And for March and April, I'm using the Mesquite Tarot. Again, blank page. Then charisma, this is things that I do that relate to charisma for me. That's quality time with people, date nights, gaming with friends, things like that. And the decks that I used for that for January and February were the Bianco Nero. And for March and April, I'm using the Avasomnia Tarot. Again, spirituality. Right now, that's really just heavily focused on my deity work, because that is a big part of my spirituality practice. And that's really where my focus is. I might add more along the way. The decks I've been using are the Imbolc Oracle for the first 2 months, and then into March and April, I'm using the Feminine Wisdom Oracle. Now, obviously, I'm using different decks when I'm actually engaged in deity work. This is just the decks that I'm using in my Gamify readings at the beginning of each week. And then finally, we have my dexterity, which is basically work, and that's content creation, writing, admin, things like that. And the decks that I was using for that for January and February were the Lumina Tarot, and for March and April, it's been the Dreamer's deck. I think that's all I have in here. And then in these back few pages, I have Initiative, which I'll be honest, I've done like once or twice. This is supposed to be a fun list of roll your d20 and do the fun activity on it. I just haven't had time. I'm up against a deadline, and I haven't had time to do this kind of stuff on top of everything else. Maybe after my deadline, I can do a little bit of this, but I've really only done it once or twice. It is fun, but I just don't have time. This one is tarot related, so I have 2 different lists in there. I think I've done one from each. So just roll a d20 and then do whatever the tarot prompt is here. And these are not like spread questions or anything like that. These are like activities. When I go into spread questions, I do have my Wild Magic, and this is a D100 list. Again, I have this list available in that original video. If you want to download it, feel free to use it. It's you roll your D100, and that creates tarot spread prompts. And again, you can roll your D100 multiple times to get multiple lists. I've been doing this every Sunday for the most part, where I roll my D100. I get my reading question. So how can I be more honest with myself, or how can I amplify my personal growth? And then I usually do a 3 to 4 card reading around that. And that is my Wild Magic practice that I do pretty much every Sunday. So that list is in here, and in the extra pages I don't have anything, and I just have random stuff in the back. So that's how my record keeping is going in my Gamify. So let's just pop into my daily planner really quick so I can just show you how this information ends up in here. So this is where kind of I started realizing that I was tracking a lot of the stuff that has to do with Gamify in my planner. I think I talked about this when I did a planner update. It used to look a little bit different and to what it looks like now, because I've changed the way I do my daily pages. So my pages more in the beginning of the year were kind of like more planner-y style. And I realized that I like putting my tarot readings in here, so I've kind of shifted the daily pages from being planner oriented to more of basically like a tarot journal or just a regular journal. Sometimes I put readings in here, sometimes it's just journaling. And then I'm using my weekly spreads for my actual planning, and this is working really well for me because I can also use my color-coded system to divvy up things. And you can see here that I just kind of started doing this in March. And as we go into April, you'll see that I start getting more and more into the color coding system. So I can really easily look through here and go, that was a whole work day, but I also did my library reading. And then I had some work, and then I had coffee with family, and then I had date night with my husband, and over here's more work, and here was a reading. And so I can look at these, here's my wisdom. So I can look at these really quickly and see where all of my points are earned. So when I go to fill out my weeks in here and put all my little dot stickers in, all I have to do is go through here and look for the color code. So on March 24th here, I've got my 3 dots. For vitality, this is actually insight. I used the wrong color code, but it's insight and dexterity. So my vitality is noted down here in the green. My insight is in these yellow colors, and then my dexterity is gray. So I can just really quickly look at this and go, yep, got something there, and something there. So let's look at Friday the 28th here. So I have my vitality down here in green. I have my insight, which is here in the yellow. And then I have my charisma, which is a date night, and my work is in gray. So this real quickly tells me what I did every single week, and I can track it in here. This really breaks it down so I can really quickly and easily look at how much time did I spend. It's a lot easier to look at this and go, wow, I did vitality and insight 7 times this week. So every single day this week, I connected with those 2 things. I had 3 points in charisma, so that means at least 3 times throughout this week I was having quality time with somebody. I did my 1 wisdom reading probably on Saturday. Yep, there it is. And then dexterity, I did end up working 6 days this week, which is quite a bit. So that just tells me real quickly at a glance like where I'm spending my time. And if I want to know like in detail how that time was spent, I can jump in here and just compare the two, because this is a little bit overwhelming when I'm looking at trying to parse out stuff for Gamify without having the color coded system, because I also have things in here like when I did other things or had appointments, like here the dog had training, and here I was editing game stuff. Game stuff for me is like a side quest. I don't count it in my Gamify, but I like to note when I spent time doing it in my planner, so I can look back here and see, yep, I did do those things, but I also did all of these other things in relation to my Gamify. And that's been really handy to use this system along with this system, because this gives me the detailed look at things and this gives me the overview. So if I just want to touch base really quick, I go here, and then if I want the details, I come here. So let's just go here really quick and I'll show you my Gamify reading, which I actually have been putting in my planner because I want the picture and I want the whole thing. So on Mondays, I put this reading in here, but as you can see in this one, it's more of just a reflection because I already have like the positions and the cards related here. Now I know what each of these things mean because I'm only using 1 card per category. So I know exactly what each of these things relate to, but I have the reading in here in case I need. And I've got kind of like the main takeaway message and then my reflections in here. This has just been working really well for me. Let's take a look at the last week of April's. So again, here's another one where you can see here's my picture of my actual reading, my reflections about my readings. This is kind of what I want to remember, but then I've got the details kind of over here. So again, cataloging, keeping a track, record keeping in my weeks, but really diving into the practice in my cousins. And I've been really enjoying using these two together because it really gives me a good, well-rounded way to interact with my Gamify, as well as easily keep track of things I have going on. So for anybody else who's doing Gamify, I thought it would just be helpful to share kind of how my first 3 months have gone, my first quarter of 2025. I would definitely love to know if you're doing Gamify, how that's going for you, so feel free to share with me in the comments below. As always, you'll find links for other things I've talked about in the description box. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.